All right, thank you so very much for having me today. I appreciate the team OLXT for this opportunity. Uh, as introduced, today we'll be looking at a very important topic, embracing data-driven L&D, and specifically we'll be looking at how we can integrate analytics into the L&D life cycle. So, to cover this topic, these are the things we are going to be considering today. We'll quickly look at the background of data analytics in L&D. Then we'll go on to consider the L&D life cycle, what is entailed in the L&D life cycle. Then a bit more, we'll delve into uh, data analytics to try and understand what it is. We'll try and, as much as possible, understand or appreciate some of the benefits we can get out of data analytics, and what are the various types of data analytics that we even have that we can actually utilize. Then we'll further drill down into data analytics process, that's the nitty-gritty of data analytics. Then a bit more, we'll look at the importance of data analytics, specifically in the L&D space. How then can we apply data analytics in L&D space? We'll look at various data analytics tools, samples of analytics tools that we can actually use even in the L&D space. Then specifically, we will consider some L&D analytics metrics that can be very useful to us even as we go about our analytics. Then lastly, we will look at some tips for how we can track these L&D metrics that we may have considered earlier. So let's dive into the business of the day, as it were. Okay, as I mentioned, we'll look at the background now, data analytics in L&D. Specifically, we are considering the topic embracing data-driven L&D. And this gives us some sort of impression that perhaps up until now, we are not so much taking cognizance of data analytics in the L&D space. How true is this? Well, Emerald Works had some research sometime around 2018, and the report of this research indicated that 98% of L&D teams actually agree that there is need for them to improve their analytics skills, that to them it's a priority. 98%, that's almost everybody that they had surveyed within the L&D space said, yes, there is need for us to improve our analytics skills within our L&D space. One would have thought that, okay, based on this, there will be a lot of effort put into it. And yes, further, 30% of those people that were surveyed confirmed that they have in-house capability, in-house capacity to tackle L&D analytics. That is, they have resource people internally that can actually handle analytics within the L&D team. That's as at 2018. Okay, based on what we mentioned earlier, 98% saying that it is critical to them that they improve on their analytic skills, one would expect that at least over time, over the years, this figure would rise from 30%, to some higher value. But then it happened that surprisingly, in 2020, a similar survey was conducted by the same team, and then in-house capability had dropped to 18%, meaning that there is something that is wrong somewhere. It looks like much as we want to apply analytics in the L&D space, we seem not to be doing it right, or we seem not to be paying careful attention to it. Maybe we are just not being intentional about the importance of analytics in the L&D space. Okay, moving on from this very quickly, let's consider what the L&D life cycle really does entail. The L&D cycle, according to Google, is a circular process where you identify training needs, yes, and then you go on to create training courses or training interventions around those identified training needs. And then, of course, you do the actual delivery, that's the implementation of the training course that had been created, and finally you evaluate uh, the learning that had occurred during the training intervention. But then, if this is where it ends, it's not going to be a cycle, because the cycle means that the process ends right at the beginning. That's why it goes on to say that even as the business grows, there will be more training needs, there will be new training needs, there will be reason for the training needs analysis to be conducted again. So the process starts all over again. It's either you are learning or you are relearning or you are unlearning at every point in time. So it's a cycle. You move from identifying training needs to creating the training, then delivering the training, and then evaluating the training to understand, to see the learning impact Okay, but let's move on from this to something that we are familiar with more in the L&D space, talking about the almighty ADI model. I know we are very much familiar with this. So, of course, I will take a few things for granted because I know I'm not speaking to absolute riches in the L&D space. But then ADI says that the A stands for analysis. Let's just compare how this, let's see how this compared to what Google is saying about the L&D cycle. We're starting with analysis. We are analyzing so we can understand the training needs to the gaps, the skills gap, so we can know the training needs. Then D, the first D says design. We are making informed decision to design the best possible learning experience. After you have designed the course, you go on to develop the course. Now we are bringing the design to life by building the learning end product. Then moving on from, when the training course is ready, we go on to implement it. We go on to deliver the training. That is implementation. You distribute the learning end product to the audience, and it doesn't end there. The final thing in ADI model is evaluate, where you evaluate if the learning intervention actually had been effective. So you see that this is quite parallel, very similar to the L&D lifecycle as as presented by Google. A in ADI is where we are identifying training needs in Google. Then the DD, design and develop, is where we are creating the training course or the training opportunities. Implementation is where we are delivering the training, and evaluate is evaluate. So this is typical L&D life cycle. You start from identifying the training needs to understanding what kind of training intervention would be best to deploy. Is it best to deploy it via e-learning or physical training? Should it be self-paced? Should it be instructor-led? When you have that design, then you develop the course, and then you go on to implement, and then finally you evaluate the learning impact. Moving on quickly now, let's do a bit more delving into data analytics and then the benefits. Helicopter view, data analytics would say, is the science of analyzing raw data to make conclusions about the piece or pieces of information. Even though if we dig deep, it's broader than this, but we can say this is the simplest way we can say what data analytics is. Then what are the benefits? Data analytics would help a business to optimize performance. Performance is drastically improved where data analytics is engaged. Then people are able to perform more efficiently, more effectively, profit is maximized, and then strategic decisions are made because data speaks. No wonder ITEL, for example, says data is life, even though they mean the other type of data, but then that particular saying is coined from our own type of data. Data is life indeed because it brings life to every form of business that actually employs it. So data analytics, therefore, is essential within the L&D space because it provides insight for informed decision making. It helps us to bring about personalized learning. We are able to carry out program evaluation through data analytics. Then performance is optimized, there is continuous improvement. It's just not a one-time improvement. And then this results optimally in better outcomes, business outcomes, and competitive edge in a dynamic business environment. And this is why organizations should leverage data analytics to optimize our L&D efforts in order for us to enhance employee engagement, in order to actually retain knowledge better and achieve the business strategic goals more effectively. Okay, so still talking about data analytics now, let's understand it a bit more. We would say that there are 4 types of data analytics. It's more like a progression, starting with descriptive analytics, and then we go on to diagnostic analytics, move on to predictive analytics, and prescriptive analytics. What does each of these mean actually? Descriptive analytics is the analytics type that looks at what happened without really bothering yourself over why it happened or what you can do about it not happening again. The analytics that you carry out that helps you know what happened, what particularly happened at a particular time, or what particularly happened over a period of time. So that's why it says this describes what has happened over a given period of time. And it can be used to track engagement. It can be, for example, when you are testing scores or participation rates. And this kind of analytics will help us L&D professionals to identify patterns. You are able to see, okay, if it happened, if this is what happened over this period and it happened again over this period, it's beginning to form a pattern. So you're able to deduce that there is a pattern around this happening every 3 months or every day or every 7 a.m. That's descriptive analytics. Now, talking about diagnostic analytics, this focuses more, it goes beyond what happened to find out why it happened. You are finding out, you are digging deep now to understand just beyond what happened, just beyond the fact of you telling me that out of 10 people that were scheduled for this training, only 7 attended. That's just descriptive analytics. But now diagnostic is saying, why did those 3 that were absent, why were they really absent? We want to know, we care to know. That is diagnostic. You are now beginning to diagnose, as the name implies, diagnosis now. You're trying to find out why it happened that way. So even though it involves a bit of hypothesizing, there's some hypotheses, but then it enables us to figure out how various elements depend on each other, how one particular KPI influences the other, and then we are able to identify patterns still to get insights into the particular problem or the opportunity that comes from the facts that are made out of that. Then, leaving diagnostic analytics, we are going to be talking about predictive analytics. Now, this is talking about, now we know what happened from discrete analytics. We know why it happened from diagnostics. But now let's talk more about what can we deduce from this? What does this tell us about what is probable to happen next? So predictive analysis moves from what is likely, this moves to what is likely going to happen. It moves from what has happened and why it happened to what is likely going to happen when. So such predictions are only an estimate, yes, but then the accuracy level depends on the quality of data that we are able to put together. The more data you have, the more qualitative your data are, then the more realistic the result of your predictive analysis would be. And then, nevertheless, even though it's a prediction, it's an estimation, this form of learning analytics is particularly useful when we talk about creating personalized learning experiences. That's you want to be able to give people what they want, how people want to learn. You are able to deliver learning to them in the same manner that they want to learn. All right. Outside of predictive analytics, we'll go to prescriptive analytics. Now, this is the last layer of analytics now, moving away from what is likely to happen. Now we are prescribing, what are we suggesting? What should we do, either to prevent what is likely to happen or to make sure that what is likely to happen actually eventually happens. So this is a course of action. We are now saying that based on all the facts we have drawn together, based on all the analytics, based on all the intuitions we've been able to make from our data, this is the suggested course of action. So this helps L&D professionals to strategically plan for training intervention, and then we're increasing value, we're increasing impact of learning. So these are the 4 types of analytics that we actually have. Now let's consider the data analytics process. Well, a question we may want to ask is, data analytics and data analysis, are they the same thing? No, they are not really the same thing. And then the answer to that is right. It's telling us right on the slide right now. So there are 4 major steps in the data analytics process. The first step is data mining. Now, as the name suggests, this is mining. We are gathering data. We are bringing together information from different spectrums of sources, from various sources. We are putting data together. Your source can be your LMS, it can be your training reports, it can be your training attendance. From different sources, you are gathering data as relates to learning, as relates to a particular training or several trainings. That's data mining. Data management is where and how you store the data. You have gathered the data, but you don't just gather them and leave them in the air. How do you store and where do you store your data? That's data management. And how do you arrange, how do you stack your data? How do you put them in buckets? Now, you'd see on the screen that SQL has always been a common tool that we use for this way back. as far back as 1979. But let me say that even as data analysts or L&D professionals, we really do not have to have the shining knowledge of SQL. We are not IT personnel, as it were, but we can leverage our internal resources in our organizations, our IT department, to give us robust L&D platforms, maybe your HR information system or your LMS, or maybe just something specifically created for you by your IT team. So you don't have to be the one who is doing the SQL or the uh, query languages and all of those things. No, if you know how to do that, all the better. But you don't have to be the one doing that. So moving on to the next and the third step in data analytics process, that's statistical analytics. Here says this step involves the interpretation of the gathered and stored data into models that will hopefully reveal trends that can be used to interpret future data. Now, this is data analysis. So this is the difference between data analytics now and data analysis. Data analysis is one out of four steps in data analytics. Yes, so data analysis is the actual stage in data analytics where you now begin to analyze your data. You begin to query your data to understand what your data is saying, to begin to see patterns, to begin to draw inferences from your data. That's statistical and that's data analysis. So now, afterwards, when you have drawn inferences and all of that, you don't just, it doesn't end there. That's not the end of data analytics. The final stage of data analytics is data presentation. This is the reporting, where the results of your data analytics process is shared with the stakeholders. Yes, it says this final step is formatting the data such that it is accessible to and it is understandable by others. Whatever you do as a data analyst, as an L&D professional who is trying to leverage data analytics now, is not primarily for your own consumption. You are making informed decisions so that you can enhance the business. So you have an audience that you are to present this data to. So data presentation is the last aspect of data analytics. And how we go about this is very, very important. Okay, there is one of my bosses that always say that why some people don't have their budget approved or approved easily is because of how they present their budget. You know, data speaks a lot. If you are just bringing out a request without backing it up with justification, without backing it up with history and projections, then it is likely that you would receive questions that you are not prepared to answer when you are making presentation of your budget. But if you are well prepared, you have historical data, and you are making a presentation, and you are able to say that if we are able to do this, this is what we are going to save. If we do not do this, this is what we stand to lose. Then it is more likely that your budget is going to be approved. So your data presentation is one very important thing. Well, as L&D professionals, we must have presentation skills. It is not negotiable that we have presentation skills. You may not be all 100% professional, presenter, but it's one skill that we cannot do without. Just thought to mention that. Okay, moving on quickly. Importance of data analytics in L&D. Why are we even having this discussion? Why is data analytics important to us in learning and development? Okay, here says one, identifying skills deficiencies. Remember that when we're looking at L&D lifecycle, it begins with training needs analysis, trying to identify the skills gap, trying to know the training needs. So identifying skills deficiencies. Data analytics helps us to identify skills deficiencies. What are the skills that people require to perform effectively on their job function? And what is their level? What's their competency level in that skill? So this helps us to know the training needs or training interventions that are required. So organizations utilize learning analytics to assess the current skills level of the employees, yes, and this involves analyzing data related to performance, completion rates, test scores to pinpoint areas where employees may be lacking specific skills or knowledge. Another importance of data analytics in L&D is enhancing learner experience. Yes, when we have data from past training interventions, past training programs, we're able to, oftentimes we are seeking areas of improvement. What can we do better the next time we're bringing this learning intervention to audience? Would you even recommend this same training for somebody else, and why? So we're able to know what we need to do better. Or do you prefer, would you have preferred this particular training as an e-learning? Would you have preferred this training to happen over the weekend instead of during work day? These are the kind of things we may ask in our surveys, in our feedback surveys, so that we are able to enhance learner experience. Another importance is monitoring skill progression. How is a particular skill set improving? So with the use of learning analytics, data analytics, businesses are able to monitor how well the employees are picking up new skills over time. Even the current skills, how are they improving on them? The particular training intervention, how has it improved your skill, your capability on the job over time? This monitoring aids in determining the success of training activities, and it sheds light on any potential problem areas. And of course, measuring return on investment is another importance of data analytics. Return on investment is something that gives management comfort that money is not going to waste. L&D, we are sort of believed to be a cost center. We are not directly bringing money, we're not directly bringing money to business, but we're enhancing people's capability so that they can now, by their performance, by their productivity, bring in value for the business. So return on investment is very, very important. Even though sometimes it may be difficult to measure return on investment, so you're measuring return on expectation, but this cannot be overemphasized. When we collect information on training expenditure, thank you very much. Demola mentioned cost of training earlier. So when we collect information on training expenditure, and we're able to monitor employee performance prior to the training and their performance after the training, we're able to marry these to, okay, it is likely that this is the training that this person has attended that has made the person improve on the performance on the job or otherwise. And then we're able to compare these metrics to one another. This method aids businesses in determining whether or not what has been taken away from the training is bringing gains in productivity, whether it is worth the money spent, so we can proceed to develop such other interventions, or we should seek some other means of carrying out, of sharing the same knowledge. And then another importance is reporting effectively. Data analytics, when done right, helps us to achieve robust and insightful training reports. Your training reports become more robust, becomes more insightful, becomes more interesting when it is sitting on well analyzed data. Of course, it is also beneficial in obtaining management buy-ins. This cannot be emphasized. It is important that stakeholders are assured that there is value for the money being spent. So when we are reporting, our reports will not be watery because we have robust data. You're able to mention how much was spent, how much was saved in the process, how much was originally budgeted, how much was eventually spent, and how much we have saved. And apart from this, what are the expectations over the next 3 months? What are we looking forward for those who have been trained to be able to bring to the table? And 3 months down the line or 6 months down the line, when we eventually do our post-training feedback, we are able to corroborate what we have said in our initial report. So reporting becomes more effective as a result of properly done data analytics. Now, moving on to how we can apply data analytics in the L&D space. These are some specific ways where we apply the knowledge of data analytics in our space. Training needs analysis. We have said this over and over again, and we can't stop saying it. This is where it all begins. This is the first step in the L&D lifecycle, where you use data analytics to identify skills gap, and you're able to design targeted training programs for employees based on the performance, data, and feedback. It is possible that it's as a result of performance appraisal that has happened in the organization, that you've received some report that this set of people lack these particular skills, and then we are recommending this particular training intervention for them. This is data speaking now. Training needs analysis. You are able to identify skills gap. It also could be as a matter of interaction with supervisors to understand the capabilities of their team members and what support they need in terms of training to improve on their skills. Another application is learning content personalization. Yes, you're able to improve learning experience. You're able to personalize learning based on learner preference, what they've gone through in terms of learning, and how they prefer to learn. Customizing learning content based on individual learning preferences, learning styles, and performance data. This is also very important. Training program effectiveness evaluation. You are able to carry out your post-training evaluation more effectively by means of data analytics. You're able to assess the impact of training programs through various metrics. We've mentioned a lot of them that can speak to how a program is regarded to have been effective, such as completion rates, rate of completion, assessment scores, uh, the satisfaction of employee, satisfaction of stakeholders, net promoter score, and things like that. Adaptive learning, yes, this is also very important. This is what data analytics can do for us in terms of application, how we can apply it. Dynamically adjusting learning content and delivering methods based on learner performance to optimize the outcomes. You are able to give learning to people the way they want to learn. Learning analytics and performance insights. You're able to by this another way you can apply data analytics. You analyze data on assessments. Of course, not every learning intervention will come with quiz or assessments, but those that do, they are not there for the fun of it. You're able to understand the key takeaways, how much people have learned. You're able to draw insights on perhaps how much impact this learning intervention has had on the attendees, and you're able to collect feedback so you can gain insights into their progress and identify areas of improvement. Predictive analytics for skills development, you are able to, give, you are able to forecast, you're able to give insights to what is likely to happen, what forecasting future skills requirements, and you're able to develop targeted training programs based on industry trends. This is one way you can apply data analytics. A lot of things are changing. This is the era of AI and all of those things. Performance data, business objectives can be improved through data analytics. Employee engagement and retention, this is where it all ends anyways. If our learning intervention does not arrive us at, does not take us to employee engagement and employee retention, then we may be out of business soon. So analyzing data on learner feedback, course completion rates, participation to drive engagement and satisfaction with training programs, where we should always have this in mind when we are having our data analytics. We are measuring how engaged are these employees, and are these interventions able to keep these people in business, keep these participants with us for a longer period of time. Okay, moving on quickly. These are some data analytics tools that we can use, or that we often use and employ in the L&D space. Yes, popular tools for data analysis in L&D include spreadsheets. There is no way we cannot mention spreadsheets. And you see, there is always this spreadsheet that is always standing tall every time we talk about spreadsheets data analytics, because it is so important. It's at the core, it's at the center of data analytics. That's talking about the almighty Microsoft Excel. So we use spreadsheets to analyze data, to make calculations, even sometimes for data visualization. A lot of other BI tools are more like improvements on Microsoft Excel. So Microsoft Excel skill is one thing that every L&D professional should have, at least as a baseline. There's so much that this tool can do. There's so much that it can help us achieve. So we cannot actually do without it if we want to take data analytics, if we want to embrace it more in our L&D functions. Then LMS, learning management system, not everyone will have this right away, but if you do have it, it is one tool that can come in very handy when we talk about data analytics. Built-in analytics and reporting features can be used on our LMS to track learner progress, to measure program effectiveness. One very common LMS is Moodle. So if we can have this, very fine. Even though the capital, it may be capital intensive, relatively speaking, but then over time, having an LMS always pays off, especially when the organization begins to grow. Then the per head cost of every single training that is developed, every e-learning that is developed, becomes very, very minimal. Then another set of analytics tools is BI, that's business intelligence tools, talking about Power BI, Tableau, and the likes of that. Power BI is very, very important. It's a very good analytics tool. It's a very good visualization tool. But let me just mention here that Power BI, or indeed all these BI tools, is not something that you as the L&D professional should have alone. Your audience, stakeholders must also be able to, utilize this tool at least to a reasonable level. An example that I would give is in one of my past life where I was trained on Power BI, and it was a wonderful training. I so much loved it. I fell in love with Power BI, especially because I'm a bit comfortable with Excel, and I see the correlation between Power BI and Excel and all of that. So back to work. Now the mandate for management is that okay, every presentation now should be done by Power BI, done on Power BI and all of that. So I churned out a report on Power BI and I sent to my supervisor. But lo and behold, they are not even profiled. They don't even have the Power BI access. So they can't make sense of what I sent. And then I hear my supervisor telling me that, please, I don't understand this thing. Can you please just put this thing on PowerPoint for me? And and then begin to wonder if after going through the set of Power BI, I have to still screenshot every single thing and drop on PowerPoint for you. Then why Power BI? So I just thought to mention it's not enough for you as the professional in L&D to understand Power BI. The people ahead of it that will be presenting to also, especially if you are sharing that file, need to also understand it. If it's just an audience that you are presenting to, you're sharing your screen and all of that, yes, they would really appreciate it because you'll be able to do a lot of drilling, filtering, slicing, and all of that. But if you're going to be sending over for them to review on their own, then they need to have some knowledge of the BI tool themselves. Another category of tools, data analytics tools, is survey and assessment tools. Talking about Google Form, Microsoft Form, Survey Monkeys. This helps us to, gather feedback, collect data as much as possible, and analyze data. I'm sure most of us know how to use this very well. We're comfortable with this, so there is no much dwelling on this as such. Then we also have more data visualization tools. We have data wrapper, infogram, plotly. These are they help us create appealing data visualizations. Most of these are not popular; they're not really in vogue like that. But then it's a good learn. Statistical analysis software, we have the R, you have the Python. This is taking data analytics to the next level now. You're beginning to talk about a bit of programming languages and all of that. For advanced statistical analysis, you are able to help business optimize productivity, optimize performance, increase efficiency, maximize profit, and then decisions are strategically guided when you have this. Again, you don't have to be the one who has this knowledge, but nothing says it cannot be. I'll be honest with you, if for people who have a lot on their table, this may be a big ask for you to be trained on this, even as as L&D professional. But it's not. It's a good add-on. It's a good feather to your cap if you're able to understand this. I'll be sincere. There was a time talking big data, we started talking about R and all of that, and it wasn't funny. It wasn't funny. I'll be sincere. That training, I got lost in that training. I'm not sure if I ever came back to to the level of everybody that was in class with me then. But that's just by the way. So these are some data analytics tools that we can employ in our L&D functions. Okay, so now, earlier on we talked about, I mentioned that we should list out some common L&D analytics metrics, and there was a lot that was listed. So here is the list I have put together, and you may see that a lot of things that we mentioned earlier reflecting on the screen here, talking about attendance. Yes. Demola mentioned attendance, Shagun mentioned attendance, course enrollment rate. Yes, Adebo mentioned number of enrollments, training or course completion rate. The same, Adebo mentioned that, yes, average course completion time, course dropout rate, login activities, how many people have logged in and when did they log in, what time of the day are people logging in to take the course. These are uh, analytics. These are metrics that can actually help us draw inferences. Then assessments for the courses that have quizzes or assessments. Yes, this is one thing you can actually measure and draw inferences from. Pass or fail rate. How many people did you schedule for the training? How many people, for the course, for the quiz? How many passed? How many failed? Training implementation rate, how many trainings did you set out as a professional to implement in quarter three or in quarter one? How many were you able to successfully implement? Devices or training mediums being utilized. What devices, which devices are people using to take their e-learning? Are more people doing it on their mobile devices? Are more people doing it on their office laptops? Are more people doing it on their personal laptops? This gives you a clue as to how people prefer to learn or what is more comfortable for them in terms of learning. Training costs, budget utilization. Yeah, Demola mentioned that earlier when he mentioned that we could measure cost of training. Yes, Naira and Kobo is very, very important. So, how much are you spending on training and vis-a-vis how much was budgeted? Another thing is budget utilization. There's a flip to this now. How much have you budgeted? How much budget do you have for the L&D team, maybe in a year? How much of that budget are you able to utilize at the end of the year? You don't want to exceed your budget, yes, so that you are not seen absolutely as incurring cost for the organization. But at the same time, you don't want to have a budget that you are not really utilizing, because when you eventually may have need for that budget, then you can't justify why you need it anymore. Because last year we budgeted 100 million for training, you didn't even scratch 10 million. So why are you coming this year to ask for 120 million? Justify it becomes a problem. So how much training you're able to deploy. I'm not saying we should go all about, if we have the budget, let's spend it. No, we have to be reasonable about that. But at the same time, you have to reasonably maximize your budget, reasonably utilize your budget. Now, if I can make reference to the very first session of our OLXD webinars this year, the presenter talked about vanity metrics and business metrics. Yes, I remember that vividly, where he said vanity metrics are all these ones we've just mentioned now. These are training metrics. They measure the training, but business metrics is what really interests the business. This is what really interests the stakeholders. This is what really interests the supervisor of those whom you are training. They don't care about what this person scored in the quiz. What they care about is on the job, what is the impact of the key takeaways from that session. So we're talking about employee engagement, to your right of the screen now, employee retention, stakeholder satisfaction, knowledge retention level, knowledge conversion level, impact of organizational performance. These are the things that are important to the business. So these are business metrics. Of course, one speaks to the other. You can draw inferences even from vanity, this what we call vanity metrics or training metrics, to understand business metrics more. So you cannot rule them out altogether, but we have to go over and beyond just measuring the training metrics or in quotes vanity metrics to more importantly measure business metrics, talking about return on investment and the likes of that. That's KPI of the future, knowledge retention, participant satisfaction score, training program versus organizational performance, employee engagement, stakeholder satisfaction. These are very important right now. So if we compare this to the list we made earlier, you see that a whole lot of what we mentioned are reflecting here. One that I know is not reflecting here is, for example, the ITF reimbursement, but that still comes under the training cost, sort of. All right, moving on quickly. These are some tips that I can give as to how we can track L&D analytics metrics. All the metrics we have mentioned earlier, how can we track them? It's only what you can track that you can eventually gather, that you can eventually analyze, that you can eventually get inferences from, and eventually present information or present action points. So here's the action points from. So one, identify and collaborate with the key stakeholders. You cannot sit within the comfort of your L&D space or desk and then do it all by yourself. You are not the one to decide absolutely decide who goes for what training. You would not know what training needs, the specific needs of people in terms of training, intervention, or the skills gap if you work all by yourself. So we need to collaborate with key stakeholders. We need to collaborate with business leaders. We need to collaborate with business owners. We need to collaborate with supervisors, heads of departments to understand the needs of their people. So we have to involve stakeholders directly in how we shape the L&D plan to ensure that our L&D plan meets the unique needs of the various departments. Sometimes we may need to conduct surveys to gather a broad overview of learning requirements across the organization, and then this we deepen our understanding through one-on-one meetings. We cannot rely on solely and only on surveys. I've sent out a survey and say, whether direct or indirectly, I've asked you questions to understand your training needs, your skills gap, and that there might still be need, and there is often the need for us to have one-on-one meetings with heads of departments to understand their needs, to understand their pain points. How are your people performing on the job? Why is this person not performing as much as this other person? What support do you need from us in the L&D space to be able to bring them to path? Then collaboration would help to further drive learning engagement. I thought to put this point because if we have actually engaged the business owners, the business leads, it becomes easy for us to drive training, to drive learning, because when it is time for us to implement the trainings that have been developed, they were the ones that said their people needed this training anyways. So they will give the support for those people to attend. They would most likely not hinder them from attending because of some other business needs, except when it is very, very unavoidable. So you have you have their support, you have their buy-in when you eventually want to implement, if you have so collaborated with them before developing such trainings. Then one other trick is we need to clearly define the goals and objectives for our training programs. Yes, we all know that SMART acronym: specific, measurable, achievable, then R is realistic, T time bound. What do you hope to achieve with the training? If this is not defined from the beginning, then you cannot measure anything in the end. What do you hope to achieve? What are the training objectives? And those objectives must be measurable. How measurable are those objectives? If they are not measurable, how do you measure them? If they are absolutely abstract, then how do you say in the end that we actually arrived at the destination we wanted to arrive if you never clarified what destination you are going to in the first instance? And when and how will they be measured? When do you plan to measure these objectives, whether they were met or not? Is it immediately? Is it after 1 month, after 3 months, after 6 months, after 1 year down the line? And how do you plan to measure them? All this should be clearly defined even before you set out to implement. So at the point of designing and developing our courses, we should put all these things into consideration. Align your L&D objectives with the business objectives. At the beginning of the year, when business objectives are being set and cascaded, we as L&D professionals have to find a way to align our objectives with those of the organization, so that we need to understand the organization's L&D needs. For us to do that, we need to know where the business is heading. Yes. Then track performance. Tracking certain data, like we have mentioned, will help us justify L&D programs by showing that indeed these programs bring about employee engagement. It may also aid in making agile adjustments to our L&D programs. So it's important that we track performance through quizzes and all of those kind of things. Then develop an evaluation system to analyze effectiveness. Post-program evaluation, immediate or 6 months training impact analysis, all of these things are very, very important. We have to develop evaluation system that will analyze effectiveness. We have to carefully craft our questions in our feedback post trainings so that they are not just a yes and no, or the one that are leading. Some questions could actually be leading. You can almost know what the person wants you to answer in the way the questions are crafted. And it's not a right or wrong, but the way we craft our questions in our evaluations is also very important. So collecting learners' feedback post-training is essential, and it helps to monitor the results of our various L&D programs. Develop an LXP dashboard, learning experience dashboard. The learning experience platform will help us, monitor real-time L&D metrics. Yes, if you have the capability with the help of your IT team, if it's your LMS you're going to engage, even if it's just your almighty Microsoft Excel that you're going to create a dashboard on, that will speak to you anytime you punch in data. On the dashboard side of it, it tells you how many male have been trained, how many female have been trained, how many training hours you've achieved altogether, organization-wide, how many training hours has been achieved for the quarter, how many training hours have been achieved for a particular department, how much have you spent of your budget. If you have this learning experience platform, you are able to monitor real time as L&D interventions happen. Identify resources and skill up internal capabilities. Now, it's important for us to work with available resources until when more is made available. Your organization may not have the kind of budget that you desire. That is not to say that we're going to fold our arms and say, until when you're able to give me 500 million naira, I cannot have an L&D plan. No, we need to find a way to work with the resources that are available to us. That's why we have several types of learning interventions, several ways to carry out learning, implementation, training implementation. So work with what is available, and then we also need to discover and sharpen internal skills within the team. Let's develop internal faculty, and even within the L&D space, let's identify who has what skill set and the likes, so that we can harness those skills. Select and set up the chosen analytics tools. So we need to understand which analytics tool. We mentioned several of them earlier on, spreadsheets and the likes. So let's use the right tool. Let's improve our capability of using those tools. Even as we set them up, we should ensure that these tools can measure the metrics that we've identified in a way that suits our reporting. We need to begin with the end in mind. We should not draft out a survey that we will not be able to draw inferences from in the end. So it's at the point of trying to put the report together, you realize, oh, we didn't ask this particular question. And you can't go back to resend that survey again. It will be too late. So when we are setting up the particular tool, let's begin with the end in mind. Commit to regular rendition of insightful L&D reports. This is important in the sense that even when not asked for, L&D reports helps you, stand on your toes. You are on your toes all the time. If you've committed to providing monthly L&D reports, as to tell your supervisor or your head of HR or head of L&D, these are the number of trainings we plan to do in the month of February. These are the numbers we were able to achieve. These are the number of trainings we didn't plan, but we eventually we carried out. These are the number of people we scheduled for trainings. This is the percentage of people that were able to attend. This was how much we intended to spend. This is how much we eventually spent. This is how much we were able to save in this quarter. All these things, when you're able to report these things at regular intervals, it puts you on, it checks you. You are able to measure your analytics metrics from time to time. You will hardly drop the ball when you have a commitment to rendering your L&D reports regularly and make sure that they are always insightful. Okay, so these are a couple of tips that, from me, I believe that if we employ them, it will help us to track our L&D analytics metrics. Thank you very much. So that's how far we can go today. Of course, this is not absolute. There will be a lot of things that I may not have mentioned in the course of this presentation, but I believe that even with these few points of mine, if we embrace them in terms of embracing data analytics in our L&D space, we'll be able to do a lot more. Thank you very much once again, OLXD, for having me do this.